Welcome, my lovelies. Allow me to conjure the cutest of vibes that I can to kick us off today, despite it not being my area of expertise. Grab your matcha mochi and boba tea, wrangle your cat and force it upon your lap, take a breather out amongst some wildflowers by a koi pond because, oh boy, we are about to get kawaii today. I got the idea to create themed cute books when I found these great big glass cabochons. They possess a magnifying effect, and I just knew I had to paint something to set behind them that would be framed by their magnificence. In preparation for the paintings, I traced the outline of the glass cabochon 5 times onto the face of some canvas that I'd pulled from its frame to create a mold and decal from a previous video. I plan to make 5 books with similar embossing, sizing, structure, and aesthetic appeal, all with different cute themes. Peaches, ducks, frogs, a cockatiel of course, and succulents. I went for a variety on coloration, as well as selected some to be deckled and others to retain their straight edges. By now, I've already made the text blocks, as the focus is more on the cutesy covers for our purposes. Each has their own leather bookmark matching their respective color schemes. I have chosen some small charms to go on the ends of each, all vaguely having to do with their subject matter. I know the pine cone for the peaches is a stretch, but bear with me here. I wrapped the leather bookmark and secured around D-rings of various metallic shades. From those D-rings, I looped the charms with jump rings and attached them to hang sweetly and innocently for the rest of their existence. In some instances, thicker leathers, like the white, require clamping while the glue adheres. I leave them to their own devices, trusting that when I return, they will have obeyed my orders and bound themselves for time and all eternity. For the peaches, obviously, I chose the pine cone. For the ducklings, a little 𝘗𝘖𝘖𝘒𝘗. For the frogs, a silver dragonfly. For the cockatiel, a brown tassel. And for the succulents, a silver star, just because it fits the color scheme and I didn't have anything topical. The succulent also has 2 extra ribbon bookmarks, since I thought they'd fit cutely and I wanted to finish off the ribbon spool, since my tiny workspace needs to be cleared out whenever a corner can be cut. Choosing fitting cover pages was a delight. I measured each and cut them to the size of the text blocks. I then folded them to fit the page length. I leave a lot of excess until I'm certain on the sizing of each end page that fits against the cover. He's used to letting him chew deckled paper since it doesn't make a difference, but he isn't happy with me withholding the cover pages, which need to be clean, crisp, and free of bird chomps. He's clearly displeased. Do I linger on these shots for far longer than necessary? Well, of course I do, but I find myself bound by inability to ever delete footage of Tolo. I inconveniently leave the excess tails of the cover sheets on, even in the attaching step. Look, I've been down to the wire and just not had a cover sheet quite long enough before, and it's a devastating blow I wish to never repeat. Using a thin line of PVA glue on the cardstock sheets, I attach them to the first and last pages of their text block, making sure I remember which direction is up, as I've made that mistake before too. And voila! Here are our embossed base covers. I pre-drill the holes since I use literal house wall panels for covers, since I like my babies to have heft. If I don't drill them beforehand, it's almost impossible to cleanly get holes through later once everything is leathered. Especially with this thick boy white here. Now for the smooth, satisfactory leathering process. Well, 4 out of 5 smoothness because of the thick boy white. I bought a whole half hide, guys. I'm gonna be stuck with this stubbornly thick white forever. When embossing covers with leather, typically the thinner the better. I've gotten a question here and there about my leather thickness, and I tend to stay in the 1 to 2 ounce range. That is to say about 0.4 to 1 millimeter thick. The thinner, the more cooperative, and the more you'll see fine details in embossing, as well as mistakes if you happen to accidentally gouge an area. The white is 2 to 4 ounces, in case you were wondering, which you probably weren't, but I'll use my little social platform to moan about this white that somehow I still have more than half of despite making already more than 5 books out of it. When embossing, I use leather glue, or leather cement depending on my mood, to coat the area before laying the leather down gently and essentially massaging it around the curvature with my fingers. Once the basic shapes have been laid this way, I switch to the bone folder to achieve crisp edges. I have found using my hands to first press down the leather into its general areas prevents pulling and uprooting of already embossed leather in places such as around curves or tight corners, especially with leather that doesn't like to stretch much. Now that the front and back have been satisfactorily embossed for all 5 of our delicious covers, I can now work on folding in the edges. I cut the leather in a pattern I've found complementary to covering 90-degree corners. I don't own a skiving tool, I must admit, though my leather is typically thin enough that I don't need to worry too much. Skiving is a process of thinning leather from the flesh side, usually for areas that need to be folded or, in my case, tapered, so that not much of the silhouettes of their rough edges would be visible underneath the cover sheets. I typically counter this by adding a thick sheet of black cardstock to even out all the areas, including the linen and twill tapes when it comes to the attachment phase. How delectable. The gray covers for the cockatiel, the white is for the ducks, and as for the 3 green, well, you can likely use the process of elimination. Now for attachment. Fanning out both the overhanging linen and the twill tapes, I glue them to the covers with PVA, leaving out the area of the spine as I bind with an open spine method. I tie the text block together and leave it to dry completely in an upright position. This is another crossroads where I must make absolutely sure that I'm gluing the text block on the right side up. Once there are bookmarks on a text block, they aren't directionally reversible. I constantly fear that I will close up a book after complete bone dryness and find that I've glued a book block upside down. I'm fairly certain I've done this before due to my guttural reaction at the thought, but I've repressed it entirely if that's the case. I don't even mess with the cover sheets for quite some time. I know this is an atypical method for binding, but my tomes tend to have very heavy text blocks, and I like to adhere the blocks to the covers with extra steps of security, such as the overhanging linen and black cardstock before even laying the cover sheets down. Once they are finally ready, however, I can finally free the excess from its fibers and cut the pages down to size. I glue them down firmly and very attentively with PVA glue, making sure all the edges stay like a well-behaved canine. The cover sheets are a big source of inspiration for my themes of these cute little books. I must confess, Soon after I finished creating the books for this video, Joann's happened to have a 10-for-3 sale on paper, including specialty paper. So I splurged a lot on the cute and pretty cover sheets, and sufficeth to say, there will be more cute book videos in the future. For the 3 deckled books of the bunch, I carry on that trait by deckling the interior edges of the cover pages that sit up against the normal sheets of the text block. Now, I must create straps for clasps that will hold the book together. As the leather I'm using, besides the dumb thick white, is super thin, I fold them over to meet in the center of their flesh side, doubling their thickness and therefore their strength. I'm actually using jacket or cardigan clasps to hold the books together. I've used these many times as I find them the perfect size and also very aesthetically appealing, as they're meant to be worn as statement pieces. I prep the strap edges so that there is no overhang, and then do an initial bonding with leather glue to the embellishment. I allow these ample time to dry before coming in for my second pass of bonding, hand sewing with a needle and thread through their accommodating holes, which is also another reason jacket clasps work so well for me. Leather glue alone isn't trustworthy enough to hold the clasps to their straps, as they'll be under constant pressure to keep the books closed when not in use. I also glue the tied-off knots of the sewing to assure they'll stay that way in the depths of the afterlife. After full attachment of the text block, the first embellishments that must go onto the covers are rivets, if I have so chosen them. I come back in with an old reliable nail that I've been using for years that is the perfect size of the rivets and hammer them through the pre-drilled holes, which have since become filled with glue and covered with leather. I size the straps, as they have their individual needs per book that I must nurture and care for. After cutting them, I lay an initial bonding layer of leather glue, a similar adherence process to the jacket clasps. Yet this time, once the glue dries, I shall use rivets as their anchor. Depending on the leather type, I tend to be more or less careful based upon how harmless it is to wipe the leather glue off the surface. Before it dries, it can come off of chrome or aniline tannings with just the wipe of a finger, but on suede or soft surfaces, it leaves a darkened area of glue staining. Once these straps have been attached, I now punch through them again to account for the new leather layer in preparation for rivets. I push the rivet through whatever side seems it will be more cooperative unto me, and then secure its back cap into place on the other side. Then I set them, permanently. And 𝑙𝑦𝑒 they are beautiful. The rest of the rivets are textbook. I placed them as centers of the 4 corner quadrants, a placement that I find to be very symmetrical and therefore delightful to my senses. They're all set with an anvil and a hammer, forever binding a small dose of extra strength of cover to leather. And here they all are in their current forms, almost finished, save it be the paintings under their glass prisons. The Duckling Book is a white leather with golden embellishments, with light yellow pages that I stained by hand with turmeric tea. Of all these 5, this one smells by far the most delightful. The Peach Book is deckled and was dyed with yellow onion skins that ironically create a beautiful, rich, fluctuating orange that actually happened to be the original inspiration for a peach book to begin with. The Cockatiel has gray leather outside and orange and yellow deckled pages on the interior, mimicking the patterns of the 2 cute orange blushes on either side of a cockatiel's yellow face. The Succulent is pale green deckled paper, having been dyed with red cabbage, whose pH balance was offset with baking powder. They were left in the oven longer to brown the edges, reminiscent of the woody stems of beloved succulent plants. And finally, the frog. dyed with cabbage that had sat in the bath long enough that it became faint greenish brown, much like toads you might find in your local stream if you're lucky enough to have one. Ooh, now for the fun part. I've sketched on all the little canvas circles my final designs that I will be painting in acrylic paint, hoping to mimic a kawaii pastel style. For my own satisfaction, I wanted a sneak peek of the magnifying effect that was soon to come of my paintings. I trimmed the edges clean and prepared for painting. I've found with these ill paintings, it's annoying to keep them in place, so I've taped them down for whilst I work. I began all my paintings with their background color. I wanted soft, light pastel backgrounds behind each design. I wished for them each to be different, and complement the colors that I would be choosing in each scene. In this case, a purple background to intermingle with the yellows, pinks, and oranges of the peaches, the brown of the branches, and green of the leaves. For the cockatiel, admittedly based upon my son, I chose a pink background to pair with the grays and whites of the feathers, yellow and orange of the face, and green and brown of the branch and its accompanying leaves. The frogs have a split scheme of background colors, the blue of the water and yellow of the sky. They complemented the greens of the lily pads and frogs and the pink of the flowers. These paintings all had a degree of simple shading and darker lining around certain elements to accentuate their shapes and colors. The succulent background color was a little trickier to choose. I went with a soft orange that might fit in the same family as the color that the ceramic pots will eventually be, and sit as a nice warm contrast to the cool green and bluish tones that the succulent leaves will be. Of all the paintings, this one had the highest level of detail and was therefore the most meticulous. I wished to showcase the variety of succulent shapes and orientations, however, so I spent the time in getting it how I desired. The duckling background color was misguided when I first chose it. Muddy yellow, when my ducklings would be yellow themselves? Disgusting. I quickly realized this, and it became green, mixing in with the greenery of the scene and complementing the blue pond water. This scene had the most elements in its composition, and choosing colors that wouldn't detract from the ducks but still fit my guidelines was well monitored by my watchful eye. Now, to attach my masterpieces, the pinnacles of my career, the epitome of subtle and bold expression. Using leather glue, I coat the backs of the canvas and put them in their place. Can anyone take a wild guess where I'm doing this right now? If you said a car, you would unfortunately be correct, because I was finishing these books in the car. Oh, the acrobatics to get even a semi-competent shot whilst driving a car and holding the camera with your other hand. Oh yeah, I totally added my butterfly signature while in the car too. To be fair though, that specific car ride was quite spectacular. Gluing in the car, leafing in the car, and now sealing in the car. What's next? Attaching the glass cabochons? No, yeah, I did do that too, didn't I? I used 2-part clear drying epoxy glue, and if it isn't obvious, I did not have much in the way of mixing space. What you are witnessing are all simulations of applying the glass cabochons on the book with epoxy glue, since I didn't dare to do that part with only one hand, trying to film while riding in a car. But after arriving at my destination and finding the most floral spot that I could manage, I am ready to show off their final forms. None of their spines are quite broken in. That's a privilege I believe is owed to the purchaser of any new book. Yes, I know the cover sheets are oranges, but I thought they were peaches and they just looked so cute even after I had the realization. Thank you all very deeply and delightfully for joining me on this journey of cute and whimsical vibrations. You may now stand, wave to the coy good morrow, throw away your empty boba cup, and go on about your life in miserable reality. Unless your cat fell asleep on your lap, and then by the rule of law, you're stuck there until it awakens. And in that case, I have your cats to thank for keeping you watching this entire video. Let me know which cute book was your favorite in the end. These books will be up on my Etsy for those of you who are interested. The links are in the description. Join me soon for other books, different projects, and strange undertakings here in the dimension of limbo. And as this music playlist that I'm currently listening to reminds me that I am the anti-hero plotting his revenge, I bid you all a good existence and await your return, as a command rather than a suggestion.